Make the ground shake.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host Gamer K, and a big Happy New Year to everyone from the Game Hub. 2020 is officially, well, not officially, I mean it's been over for like 5 days, but it's officially over, and hopefully 2021 gives us a bit better of a year, and not just for the Game Hub, but for everyone out there. I just want to say that right off the bat. And this year, it's going to be hopefully a little better for the Game Hub. New video ideas and some old videos I never really got to do. Some big announcements, some big anniversaries coming up this year. And hopefully we can get to them good. And I just want to say, to start off this year, I want to do a list that I've been working on because over a year and a half, I've got into a great Japanese series called Kamen Rider. And it's basically the spin-off, well, alternate spin-off of the Super Sentai, which is the Japanese Power Rangers. And I'm just going to take the camera right now. Late last year, I got one of my friends, Mina Peach Art, to do this fantastic Kamen Rider X-Aid group artwork with all the riders, and it's amazing. So I just want to give a big shout out to Mina Peach Arts for her amazing work in the commission. I love it, and that's going to be on there every second month, because I'll be alternating between that and my Joker and my giant ghastly Gengar mech. So those ones will always be in the middle. But on top of that, Kamen Rider has been an amazing series for me to watch, and binging 45 to 53 episodes each season and watching 11 of them in a year and a half, some people might say I'm crazy. That may be so. But it's such a great series, and I hate that I got to it late. Kind of like how I got into the Super Sentais a little late, but this list is me counting on all the Kamen Riders I've seen. So that would be seasons 11 to 21. I'm not counting 22 yet because it's still going on, so I can't really judge something that's not complete. And I will be going through these in order of my enjoyment of the series, taking into account the characters, the plot, the villains, the armor. Well, not the armor, but the aesthetic, the motif of the riders themselves. For those of you who don't know Kamen Rider, I would advise you to look some of it up on YouTube and kissasian.com. That's where I watch it. Great site to watch Japanese shows. And it's not just the Super Sentais and the Kamen Riders they got. They got a lot of Japanese dramas on there that, honestly, I may take a look at. So, without further ado, let's get down to the list. Coming in number 11. Fruit and Samurais. Japan really knows how to mix in the weird stuff, doesn't it? Kamen Rider Gaim is, is the fifth season of the new generation. It basically tackles, it doesn't really tackle big issues. I mean, it's a great series. It's got drama. It's got hidden plots, treachery, kind of like in feudal Japan of samurai warriors, and it all stems from a bunch of teenagers dancing in public for competitions. Okay, and then they have these locks, these little fruit locks that release creatures for them to battle in order to gain territories against other dance troops. I didn't say it. I said it was going to be weird right at the get-go, so don't put those rolling eyes away. And then enters the Kamen Riders, who are saving the town from these invading monsters. And just because something's at the bottom of my list doesn't mean I really don't like it. There are just a couple things in Gaim that fell short for me. For one thing, the plot with the company Yggdrasil on collecting data on the forest in another dimension that's leaching into our world via these zipper portals. I don't really know what the whole plot was of this. I mean, even halfway through, it just felt like they were missing something, so they threw in monsters, the overlords from the other dimension, and yeah, it just fell apart for me. I mean, and I can follow bizarre plots. I can follow Kingdom Hearts and Assassin's Creed, for crying out loud, and even this plot got me confused and having to Google everything and research everything. I mean, the weapons are cool. I mean, having fruit and samurai warriors be a motif, be interesting. And a lot of the characters I do like because of their personalities. It's just the monsters in it aren't really that well done either. I mean, they look like these like little larva creatures, and then they eat the fruit, and then they become kind of color-oriented monsters of Japanese lore, like a tiger, a phoenix, a dragon, a turtle, a deer, and it just looks like the paint job on them was mudded. So yeah, because of the monsters and the plot not really making much sense, Gaim's at the bottom for me. Kamen number 10, Kamen Rider W. Yes, it's called W. It's pronounced double. I love a good crime series. Crime shows are one of my favorite series of TV and TV games. And W is one of those. I was really great. And this is number 11. I'm not going to say which one's which anymore because that's just going to be annoying and mess me up in the list. So it follows a private eye and his encyclopedia best friend who looks up the facts for the crimes in order for them to find who's been selling the Gaia memories, which are like USB drives of data with a certain code in them. When people put into their bodies, they morph into the monsters, which I really like. It's been a while since I've seen the humans become monsters in a series, because Power Rangers definitely doesn't do that at all, if I'm remembering correctly. But W does have some pitfalls. I mean, the crimes themselves are really good. I mean, I really like W. I can't remember the original guy, the first guy's name. I mean, when they transform, Encyclopedia Dude's mind goes into the other guy's, so it's two minds and make one great detective. And it's really fun seeing the double of when they put the other powers in. Unfortunately, they don't have that much, so there's not much for me to judge. And the other characters are pretty fun. I mean, they kind of boil down to a generic noir-ish detective series. The villains, on the other hand, and once again, the plot is where it kind of boils down to me justifying it being on the list. It's hard to remember, it's hard to keep track without all the other crimes going around. And also, the villains aren't really that entertaining. It's basically a family that's producing the Gaia memories and selling them on the black market to gain data, if I recall right. And as fun as they are, they're just... I even have to Google them in order to remember them. And the plot, once again, it's just lacking a little bit. I mean, at least for me. I mean, I still love this. Once again, just because I put one on low on the list does not mean I don't like it. It's just hard for me to follow, and I mean, not hard for me to follow, just to remember and get the plot. So, yeah, and plus with a limited amount of powers, the only reason it's a little bit higher than Gaim is because I love the detective genre. So, yeah, that's the only reason. So, let's continue. Ghost. I wanted to love this one so much because I like the supernatural element. I really love the motif of using like ancient heroes like Robin Hood, Beethoven. Okay, Billy the Kid was a murderer so I guess he's okay. And a bunch of others I've never heard of like Ryoma, Nobunaga, and who else? Hang on. I'm trying to think here. Sanzo and a whole bunch of other heroes throughout history and lore. Well, most of them are based on real people, and I love that. I love using the motif of using ancient people as a power, and the whole eye motif kind of makes it work good. The story is, again, I like the villains, except for the main plot halfway through when they're trying to do this. Kind of like what happened in Assassin's Creed Revelations when the villain wanted to gain access to the vault in Altair's library in order to make all people in the world see his way of thinking because he feared disorder from difference, so everyone would be him, kind of. And that's what the end game of this one was, and it sucked. The characters in Ghost I really enjoy, but the plot just made me enjoy it less than I would have, because the main hero dies and he's given 88 days to find all of the icons, the 15 hero icons, and he gets a wish granted. So basically they're kind of doing Dragon Ball Z for a little bit here with getting a wish, and it just gets annoying. And then after the 88 days go by so quick, and then they have to do another 88 days later to bring him back to life. And that's when the second half begins, and it's really irritating. But again, the motif of the hero and all the characters I like. There's a spiritual guy who tries so hard. There's a best friend who only believes in science, that there's an explanation for everything, even though they're, fighting ghosts. And all the monsters have a motif of another ancient person, like Picasso, the Wright brothers, Joan of Arc, Jack the Ripper. They have a motif of a lot of the best people of history, and I really enjoy that they did that. But that's why it's a little bit higher than W and Gaim, because the motif fits really good, and the characters are enjoyable, and the monsters are enjoyable. The only thing that narrows it down is the villains and the plot. So that's always there's always going to be one reason or another I'm going to give some criticism until we get higher on the list. O's. That's spelled O-O-O-S. This one was technically my first one introduction into the series. So I did have to go back and watch W afterwards, so it's great. Using 3 different animals for a combination form really worked, and they're all color coded so you can tell which ones belong. The hero Edgy is kind of a slacker who can't get a job, and for some reason only has 1 pair of underwear. That's important in the first episode. So the motif is basically 3s. In every episode name, it always names 3 things that are kind of relatable to the episode. And I really like that. The characters are fantastic. I really love, and the villain. Okay, I'm going to get to the villains before I get to the other characters. The villains are these creatures called the Greed, and that's spelled with 3 E's, who are animalistic monsters who basically represent greed in one way or another. And they create their monsters by placing coins into humans who have a certain type of greed, whether it be food, constantly buying stuff. What else did they do? A need to save people, information, the wanting to perform surgery. They go through a different varieties of greed, and all the villains have a certain animal motif, like Uva, who's the insectoid. And not only that, but they all have their own method of creating the their yummies, which are basically the monsters of the series, which also have the humanoid face with a animal costume motif. Uva, who does the insects, basically inserts a coin and the creature will come out and evolve. The more the person's desire is fulfilled, the stronger and stronger it gets. Kazari, who's the feline guy, he's more of a sociopath who uses his fellow greeds. He'll implant a coin in someone and basically they'll become a host for the yummy until it's ready to come out, the more their greed is fulfilled. Mezelu, who uses aquatic animals, basically inserts the coin and then an egg will suffice in an area close to the host, that's really close to the host, and will start to grow into more of a kind of a culmination of aquatic creatures into this giant form. Kind of like how that new water Pokemon in Sun and Moon... No, not Sun and Moon. Whichever one, that's a small fish, and then it turns into a bunch of other fish to create a whale, something like that. I can't remember the name. Then we have Mezelu, who's the land mammals, like gorillas, elephants, buffaloes. He really doesn't... He's kind of one of the dimwits of the group, so he doesn't really care. He just wants to fulfill his own greed, even though he doesn't know that's what he's doing. He'll create his own by taking a coin and shoving it into himself, releasing a monster. And Ank's different evil Ankh will create the birds, the birds, avians. I'm going over myself. Who will create a bird one, which will take up the greed host and bring it to a nest, and it will start doing stuff in order to bring its desires to the nest in order to make it stronger. It's one of those. Now, the main character and then the main villain is a twist in the end, is really, really twisted, and I love it. Trying to destroy everything because nothing can be completed until it's destroyed, is what his philosophy is. Now, the other characters are really fun. We got the cop, who's being taken over by the original Ankh, which is basically a floating hand until he possesses the person. And he has that cool, sleek, yellow blondish hair, and he's always an ass to Edgy for no reason. He has a fondness for blue ice cream pops, which his whole personality is fantastic. It's kind of that irritating brother who wants you to get to work, but he just in the love episode, he's hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. And then we have the other cop who's trying to help. And then we get Dante, who is one of the greatest characters in the series. For good reason. He's trying to get 1,000 of the silver coins at the monster's end. And he's always competing with Ankh and them to get them. Man, I just explained a lot more of that one than need be. But it's one of my favorites. The reason it's low on the list... I mean, it's not terrible. I just wish they could include more enemies, because near the halfway point, it feels like it's slowing down and there's no real big conspiracy plot. But because it's animals and because of the comedy that happens in it, I really enjoy it. Not only that, but the message it says that greed and ambition are a good thing, but if done in moderation and not to excess. That's what I love about it. Well, let's get to the next one. Magic, and it's showtime. Kamen Rider Wizard comes up next on the list, and honestly, it's the longest one I watched, being 52 episodes plus the final episode. So 53 episodes. It's basically these creatures. There was an event called the Sabbath, and a whole bunch of people were transformed into phantoms by giving into despair and turning them into phantoms. And that means their humanity is basically gone. When people become phantoms, they keep their original personality and they can keep their human form, but they've lost their humanity. Like, they've completely lost it, and their memories, basically. Except for one. The one who overcame his despair. In the show, when someone goes into despair, a certain memory of theirs is destroyed by eliminating an item or them losing hope in their dream. Except for the main character, who becomes Kamen Rider Wizard and is given a female friend by the White Wizard, who tells him to look after her and to fight the phantoms. And again, we get a cool guy, and then we get the cop friend. Why is it there's always a cop in this? I don't know, but it's fun. The villains in this are a little wishy-washy a little bit, except for one who becomes one of my favorite characters, who I will be explaining later in the year in my next top 13 death battle ideas. The entire thing kind of slows down a little bit. The story is great. The monsters are fantastic, all based on mythological monsters like a minotaur, a lizard man, a were-tiger, a gremlin, a phoenix, and they're all really done well. The focus of the show is all about saving a life while destroying everything else. I was not expecting that, but it was a good twist. It was really good. It was fantastic. One of my favorites. I just wish there was more build up to it all, and it just didn't. There is some mystery involved in it, but not as much as I like. But the motif and the action and the whole never giving up on your dream and everything, that always hits home with me, and why Wizard is one of the best. The main villain, though, is kind of a bore, but the other villains make up for that. Next, a lot of Kamen Rider fans are going to be surprised this is in the middle of the list, since it was like 2 years ago that it came out. The 20th Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider ZO, which has a big influence on time travel. Going through the old year, well, not all the years, basically the last 9 years of the Kamen Riders, like time traveling there, solving an issue there that will affect the monster here. And it's all about this one kid who's destined to become the Demon King Oma Zio. So, 2 other time travelers from the year 2068, I think. Yeah, 2068. Travel back in time to try to kill him. But then with the Prophesier Waz, who I really love him. He's one of my favorite characters of Zio. He helps him become the Demon King Zio. And so do they, but they want to see if they can change the future and not fully kill him. Just see if he can become a kind Demon King, which is the base. And then also we get to go through all the Kamen Riders in the past, and that's the power-ups, the armor of all the other Kamen Riders, and it's also the monsters, the Time Jackers, who are a group of time travelers who are trying to find another king to overthrow Zio in the past by taking people in despair, saying they can fix everything by giving them another rider watches, which is the powers, forcing them into them and turning them into the another riders, which are basically evil versions of the previous Kamen Riders. I love that for an anniversary like this, since the heroes are using the other riders. Why not do the other riders as monsters? I love the design of them, how they take the designs of them and make them look monstrous and twisted. And it's done really, really well. I enjoy it. And the big twists near the end, I really enjoy them. ZO was a fantastic anniversary for 20 years of Kamen Riders to be doing this. And it's just freaking fantastic. It's amazing. And the only reason it's lower on the list is I kind of wish there was more than 2 episodes to each rider. the old riders. Also, we really didn't get one with Kamen Rider Double W, and that's kind of lame. But everything else was great. Also, the other riders, like from 1 to 10, we got to see a good majority of them, but we never got to see them use their watches for armor. So it's kind of a bittersweet kind of thing. We get to see all the old ones, but we never get to we don't get to see most of them using the watches. And I just wish that the climax didn't do that cliche where they reset things so everything's okay now. It kind of just eliminates the entire show. Any show that does a reset and make things better, it just, I don't care for it. That's why it's in the middle. I liked everything about the show: the villains, the riders, the characters, the abilities, the plot. It's just the ending brought it down a lot. So, next up on the list, something that one of the ones that really got me into the series, Kamen Rider Forze. And finally, we're doing what Power Rangers did and going back to high school. It's a Japanese high school, and there's a lot, but it's done really well. The power of space out of high school. It sounds weird, and what's better is, unlike other Kamen Riders, this could have happened with anyone. Like, it wasn't fate or destiny or plot. Okay, it is kind of plot that this exchange student with a big freaking pompadour that would honestly make Danny Zuko look like a wuss. Rentaro is one of my favorite Kamen Riders because on his first day of the school, he basically says he's going to be friends with everyone in the school. First day, he looks like Danny Zuko with Elvis hair, and he's like friendly as all heck, and I love that. Luckily, one of his old friends is in the school, and she and her other friend who have the Kamen Rider thing tell him how to work it, and then they start saving these students. Another Kamen Rider series where people become the monsters. It's basically forwarded to the students who are having problems and are being bullied or want something better, who are given the Astro Switches to turn into the monsters. And the monsters are by far one of my favorites in the series, in the Kamen Rider series, because they're based on the constellations. Not just the Zodiacs are the main monsters, like the main villains, but the other constellations, like Muska the fly, Monocronus the unicorn, Chameleon the chameleon, Bixus the compass. They take all these constellations and they build the monster design, and not only that, but having the actual constellation on the monster as a motif. I love that. It's such a cool design. And not only that, but if they had the right potential, some of the constellations can become the Zodiarts, which are the 12 main constellations. I love that. It's something super simplistic, but it's something super artistic as well. And not only that, but Rentaro and his friends build their friendship ring. Okay, that was stupid of me to call that. With different people in the high school. With the very popular girl who, all honesty, isn't that bad looking, so that's kudos. The quarterback of the football team, who the jock friend, the weird goth chick who, all honesty, I wanted to see her have a moment with Kamen Rider Meteor, because it's shown in the movie that they are technically a couple, and I really wish that they had more moments. I mean, the small moments they had were awkward and weird, but it worked, and I loved that. And then we have the b-boying information kid, who's basically the Japanese skater boy, and I love him, Jake. Just cause. I love it. And not only that, but we also have the one teacher who's kind of being a jerk to them in the beginning, but then later on he realizes that there's a teacher who's giving the people the Zodiac switches, and he decides, you know what, if a teacher's doing this, I need to do my part and help them. And I love that the turnaround isn't just out of nowhere. He overhears the plot, and it's amazing, and he overcomes on his own. I hate it when characters are forced into the role. When they're given it, and it just works. And Kamen Rider Meteor, he's kind of a loner in the beginning, like all second riders, but he does everything justice in the end. And him and the goth chick, that it would have been awesome if they were the ones in the Forze episode of ZO. It was amazing. Not only that, but the main villains are adults and the staff members and some other students. And the one thing I love about Forze is that accumulates what high school can be like for everyone. People who are afraid to leave high school, wondering what they're going to do next. Because in high school, when people build up their reputation in high school, the minute they leave, that goes out the window. Teenage drama, romance, all the things of what they're going to do afterwards. It just builds into this amazing high school drama with it's just fits. And I miss when shows used to do that, because it needs to be done. And Forze is the perfect rendition of that, and it's only halfway up the list. So what are the other ones doing? So, and also this one is also the my friends are my power. It just works. Going on to the next one. Last year was the 21st new Kamen Rider of the new generation, Kamen Rider 01. In a maybe somewhat future. Okay, I'm just going to say this. This Kamen Rider is basically heavy on iRobot and Detroit Become Human. I am pointing just in case in the future someone could edit those images here when I point to them. Just for the heck of it. Because like I say, I'm a cheap Canadian production, and that's the way I like it. So basically, the Huma Gears, which are androids who are built to help humanity, have been created, and basically a Detroit Become Human, a revolution of the Huma Gears come up as the villains, and I hope I'm saying this right, Metsubunishi.net, a terrorist group who are hacking into them and turning them into the Magia, which are they put a key that's basically an animal into the system, on them, and they kind of burst out into a mechanical monster. And they're trying to, release them of their servitude, because the Huma Gears don't really have personalities per se. They have personalities built in, and the show is basically showing that they can evolve and develop more. And the main hero is fantastic. He's basically the grandson of the owner of the company that makes the Huma Gears. Grandfather dies, and he is put in charge. And what is the main hero like? He's a failed comedian, and his jokes aren't really that funny. But he wants to make people laugh. Immediately, I liked him. And then he becomes Kamen Rider 01 in order to stop the Huma Gears from being used by Metsubunishi.net. And this series takes place within 3 different arcs, I'm gonna say. One is showing people that just because they're machines doesn't mean they can be easily replaced. They can't do a great job, or they're not trying to replace humans. It kind of teaches humans to not take things that make our lives easy for granted, as some characters do. And then later we get into the part where we find out that a lot of them have, that the villains at Metsubunishi.net are Huma Gears who revolted. via the Ark, which is a artificial intelligence, kind of like Vicky, who wants to destroy humans because of all their hate and anger and animosity between others, causing war. So Metsubanishi.net are basically doing the will of the Ark by eliminating humanity via the Humagear. So basically, again, kind of Detroit Become Human with a little iRobot mixed into it. And not only that, but the other riders are great. Not only that, but the villains become riders as well, which is amazing. Jin is my favorite character in the show. Well, not in the show, but he's my favorite villain from the show. Done very well. You can see the emotion in the characters, and I love it. The abilities are little keys that are animal-based again, and they're all amazing. From the main motif of the hero being a grasshopper. I'm not even going to argue. It's fantastic. From a wolf and a cheetah to the others. And then in the second halfway of the series, a new CEO with his own company, who's a real ass in the very start, presented by Soiya. For people who've watched it, you know. Opposes that Humagears are inferior, and then the whole arc shows that Humagears have a conscience. They have their own personalities. They can start thinking for themselves after being unlocked and shown that they can do their own life. And it's done very, very well in this. You can feel the emotion that all of them feel. And it's beautifully done with robots. And androids, more specifically. And that's something that really, really gets to me in this series. Because there are times when I have cried real emotional tears via the drama, the sadness that happens. And yeah, there's one character that I really, 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 really dislike because of how stupid they were the entire time. And I just love the entire series of 01 so much that it gets the number 4 spot, but the next 3 do it exponentially well. The only reason it's not in the top 3 is because I have to wait for the new movie to come out on Kiss Asian for me to get the satisfying conclusion that I wanted. Next. So, a box from Mars is brought to Earth. It's opened. The Pandora's box. And it creates 3 sky walls in Japan, creating 3 new districts. And what's the key to stopping the threat that's in? I'm going to steal this joke. Of course, don't you know anything about science? That belongs to atop the 4th wall. I'm just going to say it. It's a great joke for this series. So, yeah, don't you know anything about science? It's the only thing I can do. This genius physicist who uses 2 different essences of anything, but the main ones are a rabbit and a tank, combines them into the best match and becomes Kamen Rider Build, meaning to build upon and to I don't know what the definition he went with, but it's just done amazing. Within this series, and as wacky as the freaking combinations are, the characters are what make this series. From solving a murder, to uncovering a conspiracy, to uncovering the truth of the Pandora's box, the Skywall, and everything else that happens in this series. Now, there's not a lot of monsters, unfortunately, that are called the Smash, which are human beings that have been infused with the essence of the Pandora's box. And that essence is then in turn absorbed and turned into a full bottle, which gives Kamen Rider Build his ability to transform. And normally I would drop points for there being less monsters, and then later on they do the Kingdom Hearts method where they just make them completely metallic black in order to give them a power-up. So yeah, they're repainting just to make them tougher. And then the other characters like Banjo, shoot, I keep forgetting Kamen Rider Grease's real name. I keep forgetting a lot of the names. But all the other characters combined give this show its drama, its humor. There are times where it's ridiculous, but it just adds to it. There's some heart-wrenching moments. There's some shock value moments. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I ever do my top 13 Kamen Rider villains, the one from Build is right at the top of the list because he's the Xehanort of Kamen Rider. He manipulated all the events from before the show started. The whole Mars incident, the whole Mars thing, he created this. He set in motion the Skywall. He set in motion Kamen Rider Build, the Smash, everything that happens in the show, all to obtain his real form and continue his work. And it's done in a way that keeps you guessing, makes you think there's some bigger plot involved, and the main villain, even though I said he's the Xehanort of Kamen Rider, he's also the Zigbar / Lushu. He knows, throughout the series, you think he knows more than he's letting on, and he's just letting things run its course, and it's threw me for a loop so many times, in that I love it. I love those surprise villains, and I had to watch the movies in order to get the full story in it, and it's done beautifully well. Everything ends on a great note, except for some things where it kind of, again, resets. And like I said in ZO, when it resets, I have to drop it a couple points. But this one is done so well that I completely forget about that rule. And now number 2. As I've stated, I'm a big detective and crime show fan. And when the motif is machine monsters that are gaining intelligence and want to become the dominant species, and the motif is cars, Kamen Rider Drive is at your service. Every single episode has a crime involved, from robbery to murder to everything. Okay, not the worst stuff, but it's all done by a detective who solves everything in top gear. And the car motif threw me for a loop a little bit. I wasn't really that invested in it. And then it kind of changed my mind with how cool they can be, having different types of tires, being results of different cars, and it's just done fantastic. And then the second rider with the motorcycle comes in, and it's done even better when he comes in. And again, there's a mystery. There's mysteries to solve. There's a big conspiracy happening within the entire show, and it just keeps getting better and better. There are times when the main hero is framed, and they need to find the bad guy behind the conspiracy and the corruption, and even solving his own father's murder during the proceedings of the show. And it's done exponentially well. And Drive is on number 2 because of the crime genre and how far they go with it. This is something that I criticized W on for not doing enough. They didn't do enough with the crime. They didn't do enough with the conspiracy. They didn't do enough with the false accusations of the detective being a murderer. It's done so well that I wanted them to do more. And the main villain in the final face-off, the villains team up with the heroes, even if it means their own destruction. And all honesty, it worked. Except for the main villain being really egotistical, being manipulative, but I love it. I'm just going to say right now, with Let me see. Okay, build. No, wait, just drive and Exade. You know what? In general, when it comes to fathers, Kamen Rider has a bad reputation for them all being deadbeat jerks. And Drive is definitely a poster boy for that one. The main villain uses everyone around him, and it's beautifully done in the final climax of his destruction. Because he sees himself as this super intelligent guy, and that anything else is just doesn't matter. He's a sociopath, basically. And I love that. And the climax, it just works. And even the movie, the crossover movie with Ghost and Drive, it gives us a great ending. And I'm a sucker for romance. And I love it. I love the ending of the movie. I'm just going to say, for season 23, there better be more romance, because I need my fill. Well, let's see. I talked about a good number of them, and now it's time for the number one. Yeah, Kamen Rider Exade is my favorite Kamen Rider series of all the ones I've seen. I've never watched all the old ones, because as much time as I think I have, I'm not crazy. The theme fits. I love it. Doctors saving people from a video game virus using video games. I realize that that's kind of I realize that the whole virus thing is kind of bad because of the whole thing that's going on, but the entirety of Exade hits every note that I love about the Kamen Rider series. All the riders are doctors in their own way. We got the main hero, who's the mysterious gamer M, who's also a doctor, so he's not a full-fledged doctor, he's a resident, so starting out. Think of one of House's interns. Except for Foreman, he's actually pretty good. The second one is the perfect surgeon who can cut through anything, and he has his own personal motivations of why to do this, of becoming a Kamen Rider, but he's not that much into games. He takes everything too seriously because of what happened during the virus. And we got the lone wolf doctor who lost his license because of the event that happened in question, and he can't really forgive himself, so he wants to go at it alone. And then we get the morgue, the autopsy doctor, who constantly lies. I love that. He's such a cool character. And the entirety of the video game virus hits its peak when random people had the virus, and then the monsters called the Bugsters emerge. And there's two other Bugsters who I love. Parad, they change his name halfway through. My favorite character in the show. A Bugster. They want the Bugsters to overtake the human race. And the monsters all are stemmed from a single game that aren't real games, but they're made for the show, which are the power-ups, the gas shots that the doctors use to transform. And they go through every genre of video game in order to create these. They go through platforming, RPG, first-person shooter. What else did they go through? Rhythm games. They even go do a dating sim game. Zombie games, flying games, Japanese games, racing games, sports games. They go through every genre I can think of, and it works. The way they did a motif and even the monsters show the motif of that game. The monsters are the villains of said game that the virus is based on. And it's done well. And the big thing about this is that it is a game. Once they transform, they have their life bar on them. And if it hits 0, they die in real life. Like, there is no reset, there is no continue, which is really sad at times, especially one part, I'm not going to say for people who want to watch. It's done very well. And the big villain in the end is kind of not that difficult to guess. But then near the end, they do a complete 180 twice, and it's done very well. Where, again, fathers in Kamen Rider are jerks and big villains. It's done very well, and everything in it has everything I love. Fantastic a fantastic cast, an amazing plot that works every time. Amazing powers that, all honesty, I get giddy every time I see the power-ups done in the show. The monsters are fantastically designed with the genre of the game that they're in. The villains are done very well, although there's a little bit of good guys becoming villains becoming good guys a little bit happening, but it worked. But it's not forcefully done, and good guy becoming a bad guy a little bit in the end, and it works very well. It's not forced, it's not cliched, and it has so much emotion. It's got so much drama, and a little bit of a mystery near the beginning, and the big reveals that they do. It just works, and I really want it to happen more in the next couple Kamen Riders. Like, in the new generation, because after Saber, I have no clue what's going to happen next. So, yeah, with everything I said, X8 is my favorite Kamen Rider, and it will still continue to be my favorite Kamen Rider because of all the stuff they do, and also the message they do. Life isn't like a video game. We only get one life, so be careful, but live your life. And the doctor motif really works, and I just love it. Kamen Rider, I'm glad I found you. I'm glad I've watched a majority of you, and I look forward to the future of Kamen Rider. And that's the whole video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sitting down for quite possibly one of the longest videos I've done in a long time. And again, Happy New Year to everyone, 2021. Let's hope it's a good year. Coming up next week, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to my favorite villain game, where we have a quest for furs. This is Gamer K, logging out.